These bloodlines, these are the movers and shakers of the world, and this is inside information. You're not going to learn this in reading a book. When you learn who the bloodlines are, it totally changes your view of history.
Shortly after publishing this research, he was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison.
Nothing is as it seems. This is one of the first big lessons that we need to draw in dealing with our reality. Let me tell you the names of the top 13 bloodlines.
This talk was recorded in 1998. Later, he was sentenced to 111 months in federal prison. Researching this, I found that the first federal judge to review his case said there was no evidence against him. And I'll be honest, that part scares me. And I'm taking a risk by putting this out. So I'm asking you to watch until the end and really listen to what this man is saying. Because even if half of this is true, the world looks very different from what we've been told. And he doesn't just hint at things. He names names, he connects the dots, and he covers everything. Starting with politics.
If people don't want to go along with the plan, they always have their covert enforcers. They have all kinds of people in all different kinds of locations to pull the strings that if there's rough edges, they smooth it out.
Then the money system.
They created fractional reserve banking, the Federal Reserve System. The stockholders of the Federal Reserve System are listed here.
Then the people who are supposed to keep you healthy.
You've even got some secret illegal groups out there to destroy doctors who don't conform to the medical monopoly.
Then how much they actually know about you.
They know everything about people. People are tracked from the cradle to the grave. All electronic communication in this country is monitored.
Then food supply.
Some parts of control over the world's grains and food. We've got the management over here. See some of your leading families over here.
And then war.
They're rotating millions of Americans into this war. The war was structured to get as many people in. They needed a war that was going to take place close to large drug supplies because they were trying to create a drug culture over here. These people sit above the wars. They make the wars for us. We go and fight these wars and they make profit off them.
Behind every system he described, the politics, the money, the wars, there's a structure. And that structure, he says, has been in place for centuries, passed down through 13 specific family bloodlines. Names that appear at the top of banking, politics, and media, generation after generation. You'll hear them in a second. And above all of them, he says, sits a pyramid of councils, each layer smaller than the one below it. The higher you go, the fewer people there are, and the less the public knows they even exist.
You've got an anarchy level and a hierarchy level. Above the standard 6 lifetime positions, you have your special committees. You've got your council of 3, your council of 5, council of 7, council of 9, council of 13, or your grand druid council. You've got your committee of 300, your committee of 500. They made a decision to go with 500 multinational corporations. Your Fortune 500 companies are equivalent to your committee of 500.
500 of the most powerful corporations in America, all in one place. And between them, they cover almost every industry that exists. Technology, banking, healthcare, defense, food, media, energy. Apple controls the device in your pocket. Microsoft runs the software on your computer. JP Morgan moves your money. Johnson & Johnson make your medicine. Exxon fuels your car. Lockheed Martin builds the weapons that your government buys. And Google decides what information you see first when you search for anything. These are not separate worlds. They are connected. The same investment funds own shares in all of them simultaneously. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, 3 companies that most people have never heard of, sitting as major shareholders across hundreds of these corporations at the same time, across every industry, all at once. Now, Fritz says they would use 500 multinational corporations as their operating layer, the visible face of a much deeper structure. 500 corporations covering every system that runs your daily life. That part is not a theory. That part is just a fact.
We have these elite bloodlines that think that they're divine. They talk about us in their writings as cattle. They think that they're divine. That's what mean? Let me tell you the names of the top 13 bloodlines. Astor, Bundy, Collins, DuPont, Freeman, Lee, Kennedy, Onassis, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Russell, and the Merovingians, which the British royalty is part of the Merovingians. That's a 13th bloodline, as it's called. And the Van Dyne family. Well, Princess Di is related to the Astors, the Bundys, the Collins, the DuPonts, Freemans, Rockefellers. Yeah, she was related to J.D. Rockefeller. And yet they say, you know, that Prince Charles married a commoner, you know, and she's got more blood practically than he does.
These are the 13 families Fritz names. Some you already know, some you've never heard of. All of them, according to him, sit at the very top of the same pyramid. The Rothschilds built the first international banking network in history, financing entire governments and wars simultaneously. Today, Rothschild & Co. still operates globally as a private financial advisory firm controlled by the family. In 2023, they quietly bought back all public shares of the company to take it fully private again. The Rockefellers took control of American oil through Standard Oil, at one point owning 90% of all US refineries. Those pieces became ExxonMobil and Chevron. Today, the Rockefeller Foundation actively shapes global health policy, food systems, and energy transitions across entire continents. The Astors bought Manhattan real estate when it was worth almost nothing. They held it for generations. The name is still on some of the most expensive properties in the world. The DuPonts made their fortune in gunpowder. Keep that in mind, Fritz goes deep on war later in this video, and the DuPonts come up again. Then they moved into chemicals. Products they developed are inside your clothes, your kitchen, and bulletproof vests right now. The Kennedys entered politics and never left. One became president, two were assassinated. The Onassis family controlled one of the largest private shipping fleets ever built, at a time when controlling shipping meant controlling global trade. The Russells built early wealth through the opium trade and were connected to the founding of Yale University and the Skull and Bones fraternity. The Merovingians are a royal bloodline from medieval France. Fritz places the British royal family inside this lineage. Then there are the names most people have never heard. The Bundys had members inside the Manhattan Project, the CIA, and the Council on Foreign Relations. The Collins family has almost no public profile and no visible presence, which, according to Fritz, is exactly the point. The Freemans, the Van Doynes, and the Lee family round out the list. The Lee family, Fritz says, controls much of the financial infrastructure of East Asia.
In the United States, here's the political process. At your high level, we've got decisions that are made. Those decisions are transmitted down to the national level. Okay, on the national level, we've got a group called MJ-12, Majestic 12. MJ-12 originally had 6 men from the executive committee of the Jason Society. It had 6 men from the executive committee of the Jason Group, and then it had men in key positions in the government, such as head of CIA, National Security Council, FBI director. So they pass it down to the level 2 decision makers, which are the policy planning groups. Policy planning groups include the Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Brookings Institute, the Business Roundtable, American Enterprise Institute, the Population Council, Resources for the Future, Urban Institute. These people make decisions. Okay, but they can't make all the decisions still. They pass some of the decision making on down to the research policy planning groups, and I've just listed a few of those. The RAND Corporation, the Stanford Research Institute, and the Hudson Institute. We have a problem. We need to get answers. We're going to create this research project or this research group to research this project. So then this group starts with all kinds of millions of dollars of funding, and they research for 10 years, and they come up with piles of research that researchers even like myself aren't going to wade through with their final conclusion, which, by the way, happens to be what the decision was made years before anyway. So then the newspapers, which are controlled by them, these are your opinion makers, who intelligence agencies, national news media, and government councils, they'll start broadcasting what this decision was. They're lackeys that make it look like the grassroots are in favor of this. they pass a legislation and it becomes law. And if people don't want to go along with the plan, they always have their covert enforcers. They have all kinds of people in all different kinds of locations to pull the strings, that if there's rough edges, they smooth it out.
Think about how science actually works today. A researcher needs money to do research. That money comes from somewhere. Most of the time, it comes from a foundation or a university grant. And those foundations were built with the wealth of the same families Fritz just named. So, the researcher works, he produces results, and those results, consciously or not, tend to align with what the people paying him want to see. Fritz says the logic behind it is simple. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. Now take it one step further. A government announces a serious problem that needs a serious solution. They spend $5, $10, $50 million. They hire hundreds of researchers. They run it for years. The media covers it, the public waits. Then the conclusion comes out, and it's exactly what the people who funded it wanted from the beginning. According to Fritz, these studies were never about finding the truth. It was about producing a document that makes a predetermined conclusion look like science. Then the media covers it as fact, and the public accepts it because it came from experts, with funding, with credentials, with years of experience and research behind it. Fritz was talking about this in 1998. Back then, it was the media, the newspapers, the television, the people who controlled what millions of people heard and believed every single day. Today, that list got longer. Now it includes influencers, people with millions of followers who shape opinions, recommend products, and push narratives, sometimes without their audience ever questioning where that message is actually coming from.
It was wild that I didn't know how close my own wife was to the Clintons. I didn't realize it at the time.
How close was she to the Clintons?
I mean, cell phone away, like, or hey, tell Ye to say this away, or hey, go out and use your platform to push the.
Do you feel like at times you were manipulated by political forces through your wife?
Attempt manipulation.
I'll let you think about that one.
If we go in and look at the financial element in the world system, how is that controlled? They created fractional reserve banking, the Federal Reserve System. The stockholders of the Federal Reserve System are listed here. If you can see some of the names there, you'll see Morgan, Rockefeller, Pine, Reynolds, Warburg, all the families there. And these people own the stock of the Federal Reserve. When the IRS collects our taxes, the first check that they write out is sent to the Federal Reserve to pay the Federal Reserve, which is a private corporation, for the use of their money.
Here's something most people never learn in school. The Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. It controls interest rates, it decides how much money exists in the economy. Every mortgage, every business loan, every credit card, all of it moves according to what the Federal Reserve decides. Most people assume it is a government institution. It sounds like one. It has the word federal in the name. But it is not a standard government agency. It operates as a hybrid structure, part public, part private, something that has no real equivalent anywhere else in the world. The 12 regional Federal Reserve banks are technically private corporations. They have shareholders. Those shareholders are member banks, and they receive dividends. The full chain of ownership behind those banks is not publicly disclosed. When the US government needs money, it borrows from the Federal Reserve. Then it pays it back with interest. That interest comes from taxes. Your taxes. In 2023 alone, the US government paid over $650 billion in interest on its debt. That's more than the entire defense budget. So the process looks like this. The government spends money it doesn't have. It borrows from the Fed. The Fed creates that money. The government pays it back with interest, and that interest is collected from the population through taxation. Every single year. Now here's the question worth sitting with. If a private institution controls the money supply of the most powerful country on earth, and that institution has private shareholders who profit from government debt, who is actually in charge?
Like Rothschild said, I don't care who makes the laws of the country if I control the finance.
The elected government that borrows the money, or the institution that creates it?
Societe Generale, holding company that was set up by the elite. They use a lot of holding companies. One of the ways that they discovered to keep your business coordinated, let's say you have 5 sons, you place each one of those sons into a different business, and then each of those businesses are controlled by a holding company. Nobody can even see that these 5 companies are interconnected, because they don't know about the holding company. And then I go into some of the important companies that like Archer Daniel Midland Company, your hide cartel, your grain cartel, and since Iowa beef. And then you've got your government enforcement groups like the USDA, which if you're not a company within the cartel, they can use the laws to destroy you. And then the manipulation like the weather.
Now think about food, something even more fundamental than money. You eat every single day, and somewhere between the farmer who grows the grain and the store where you buy your bread, a very small number of companies control almost everything. 4 companies, ADM, Bunge, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus, collectively known in the industry as the ABCDs. Together, they control between 50 and 60% of all global trade in wheat, soybeans, and corn. Every major staple that feeds the planet moves through their hands. ADM alone operates in over 170 countries, with 420 crop procurement facilities worldwide. They process the grain, they store it, they transport it, they influence the price, and they do all of this largely out of public sight. Fritz named ADM specifically in 1998. At the time, most people had never heard of it. Today, it ranks among the 35 largest corporations in America. There are also active antitrust lawsuits against ADM and Cargill, alleging coordination to manipulate agricultural commodity prices. These are not theories, they are cases in federal court. So the question Fritz was asking in 1998 is the same question being asked in courtrooms today. When 4 private companies control more than half of the world's food supply, who decides when there is enough, where it goes, and what it costs?
This is another one of my charts. This is showing healthcare. You've got basically 3 different groups. You've got your patients and your public out here, and they're controlled because the resources that people have and your knowledge and the available care are all carefully controlled. And your doctors, they're controlled because their knowledge and training is very carefully controlled, and their resources are controlled, and their licensing and certification are controlled. And then you've got the legal system controlled to enforce all of this. And you've even got some secret illegal groups out there to destroy doctors who don't conform to the medical monopoly.
The global pharmaceutical industry generates over $1.6 trillion in revenue every year. That is larger than the entire economy of most countries on Earth. Now, here's the part worth paying attention to. In 2023, the pharmaceutical industry spent $260 billion on research and development. That sounds impressive, but who controls that research? A study published in JAMA found that in 2014, pharmaceutical companies funded 6,550 clinical trials. The NIH, the main independent government research body, funded 1,048, and that gap has been growing every single year since 2006. So the majority of the science that determines which drugs get approved, which treatments become standard, and what doctors prescribe is funded by the companies that profit from the outcome. Remember what Fritz said about researchers, that the people who control the money control the conclusions. A 2009 investigation revealed that more than 1,600 Harvard-affiliated physicians had financial ties to pharmaceutical companies. Harvard, the most prestigious medical institution in the world. This is not a theory. These are documented financial relationships between the people who produce the science and the companies that sell the products that science recommends. Fritz called it in 1998. He said the researchers work for whoever pays them. He said the conclusions come first and the studies come second. The data today doesn't prove that he was right, but it does make the question harder to dismiss.
You've got different goals that are set, and then those goals are broken down into further goals, and then they take all of their different groups throughout the world system and have them participate in different ways. So like, let's say the objective is the authority. A, know everything about people. Big Brother. So they got 9 beast computers, which are tracking all people. People are tracked from the cradle to the grave. CIA, IRS, FBI, NSA, records of all potential opponents to the New World Order. Got social security numbers and social insurance numbers. Banks and crediting, keeping track of people. You know, when you're making a transaction on your ATM in a few seconds, it's recorded in the beast computer. All electronic communication in this country is monitored. That's why the National Security Agency.
Fritz said this in 1998. Every electronic communication is monitored. Every transaction is recorded. People are tracked from birth to death. In 2013, a man named Edward Snowden walked out of the NSA with classified documents. He had worked as a contractor for the most powerful intelligence agency in the world. What he revealed was a program called PRISM, a mass surveillance system that gave the NSA access to emails, calls, chats, file transfers, and web search histories of people around the world. Not suspects, everyone. A tool called X-Keyscore was described as the NSA's Google, allowing analysts to access and analyze global internet data by simply entering an email address. The NSA also cracked the most commonly used cell phone encryption technology, meaning they could process encrypted communications even without an encryption key. Now look at your phone, the device you carry everywhere. The one that knows your location, your contacts, your search history, your banking details, your face, and your voice. On most modern smartphones, the battery can't be removed. Then there's money. Physical cash is slowly disappearing. Over 130 countries are currently developing or testing a central bank digital currency, a fully digital form of money issued directly by governments. A CBDC creates a complete digital trail of every transaction a person makes. Every purchase, every transfer, every payment. China's digital yuan already processed the equivalent of nearly $1 trillion in transactions across 17 provinces. Fritz said the goal was to know everything about everyone, to track every transaction. That was 1998. And now, we get to the part that shook me the most. War. Something that on the surface looks like conflict between nations. But according to Fritz, it might be something else entirely.
On December 13th, and I don't know if they picked the 13th because of the cult number or what, but on December 13th, 1941, a few days after Pearl Harbor was bombed, Roosevelt signed a presidential decree into law, is a Trading with the Enemy Act. If Secretary of Treasury Morgenthau would give certain people authorization, they were allowed to trade with the enemy. There is a monopoly on diamonds, people. De Beers has it. De Beers connects in with the Rothschilds, and their diamonds shouldn't be as expensive as they are. That's a scam too, because they're purposely got a monopoly so that they can make us think the diamonds are rare. But there is so much industrial use of diamonds that when the United States went to war in 1941, they realized that we had an immediate need for 6.5 million carats of diamonds. The U.S. government requested 6.5 million carats of diamonds from De Beers, which is located in London, and they turned down the United States. So what were the Rothschilds and the De Beers doing in World War II? Germans had the same need for diamonds as we. Diamonds are used in gyroscopes for the submarines, for the airplanes, and for their V-2 missiles. Who supplied the diamonds for Germans, the millions of carats? It's a diamond monopoly. It's real easy to figure out, people. They sent the diamonds to the Germans through Belgium, Congo. The United States government tried to stop them. These kingpins have so much power, they not only ignore the U.S. government, but they're able to cover their track and suppress anybody from even leaking the story.
According to Fritz, the Rockefellers shipped oil to Spain during World War II. Spain was officially neutral, but it was controlled by France, who was openly pro-German. And from Spain, that oil went directly to the other side. The US government was fully aware this was happening. What makes this harder to dismiss is the paper trail. Standard Oil, the Rockefeller company, had a formal partnership with IG Farben, the largest industrial corporation in Germany at the time. They shared technology, they shared patents, and they shared profits. Congressional committees investigated this after the war. The documents are in the National Archives. they are not hidden. In fact, a historian named Charles Higham spent years going through them and wrote an entire book about it. The book is called Trading with the Enemy. It's still available today. The chairman of Standard Oil at the time went to court over it. He did not deny it. Fritz says the German war machine would have collapsed in 1942, 3 years before the war ended, if that oil had stopped flowing. And the war connections don't stop with the Rockefellers. Fritz moves to another name on that list.
Onassis, there were approximately 480, don't quote me on the number, something like 480 Greek merchant ships when the war began. There's different figures on how many of those Greek ships were. Some say all the Greek merchant ships were sunk. Onassis says, I think, 450 of the Greek merchant ships. You have to understand that Greece in the Mediterranean, you had all kinds of heavy fighting going on in the Mediterranean. Anything that was sailing was fair game for everybody. I mean, there were all kinds of activity going on. You had Germans and Italians and British and Americans. There were a lot of shipping sunk. I don't remember the figure offhand on how many ships Onassis had, but he had, I'm sure, over 100 merchant ships. The entire Greek merchant fleet, essentially, from one side or the other, was sunk during the war. But Onassis did not lose a single ship. That took collaboration at the highest levels of the Axis and the Allies.
And then he moves to the DuPonts.
The DuPonts, another family I expose in there. The DuPonts have had almost a virtual monopoly on making gunpowder. Every war that happens, they make millions and millions of dollars off of the gunpowder and all the other armaments. I would imagine if I was a DuPont, I wouldn't want peace to last too long. I mean, war is pretty lucrative. What do these cruise missiles cost? Think of this stuff.
Wars have winners and losers, but there's always a third category. The ones who profit regardless of who wins. The weapons manufacturers, the oil companies, the banks that finance both sides, the pharmaceutical companies that supply the painkillers that follow soldiers home. Every major war in the last century made certain families significantly wealthier than they were before it started. The infrastructure gets destroyed, the population gets traumatized, and somewhere a contract gets signed.
What was the Vietnam War all about? Well, if you look at the way they structured it, they didn't send over a unit en masse, and when that division had fought for a while, pull out the division, they rotated the guys in. So you had a year tour. They were rotating millions of Americans into this war. The war was structured to get as many people in to Vietnam as possible. And what did they want to do when they got the men over in Vietnam? They needed a war that was going to take place close to large drug supplies because they were trying to create a drug culture over here. Why did they want a drug culture? A number of reasons. People are easier to control when they're addicted, makes big bucks.
I'll be honest with you, everything Fritz said in this video shook me. I don't know how much of it's true. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to present a different perspective on the world we live in. Do your own research. Look into the details yourself. Draw your own conclusions. But the question remains, if even part of this is true, what do we do? And something Woody Harrelson said in a documentary called Ethos, he talked about the power consumers have to change the world through daily purchasing decisions. His point was simple. The companies that control food, medicine, energy, and media, they exist because we fund them. Every purchase is a signal. Every dollar is a vote. The moment people stop buying from companies that poison their food, pollute their environment, and manipulate their choices, those companies are forced to change or disappear. Politicians and corporations will realize the population has woken up the moment people start spending their money wisely. So buy local when you can. Choose companies that are transparent. Question what you're told to consume. Put your phone down, spend time outside, talk to people face to face. The system Fritz describes thrive on distraction, dependency, and disconnection. The antidote to all three is simple. Be present, be conscious, and be very careful about who you make rich. Because in the end, that might be the only power they cannot take away from you. If you made it this far, thank you. Seriously. If this video made you think, a like takes 2 seconds and helps more than you know. Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every single one. Until next time.